let me propose a toast," Josh declared, lifting his glass while all the guests at his housewarming celebration turned their attention toward him. His eyes sparkled with anticipation, a look I'd witnessed numerous occasions when he was preparing to capture everyone's focus. "To fresh starts and new residences," he began, then paused for dramatic effect, "and to honoring Grandpa's legacy." A reverent hush descended upon the gathering. Our grandfather had died merely 4 days prior, leaving all of us with wounds that remained raw. Along with the other attendees, I lifted my glass in quiet tribute to the man who had held such significance in my life. "Regarding Grandpa," Josh resumed, placing his beverage on the coffee table, "I have something important to share with everyone." I observed as he retrieved an envelope from his pocket, its edges showing signs of wear. My pulse quickened. Something about his sideways glance toward me filled me with unease. "Prior to his passing, Grandpa entrusted me with this correspondence," Josh announced, his voice resonating throughout the living room of his newly acquired Denver residence. He expressed his desire for me to inherit his lakeside retreat, the location we all cherished during our childhood. The room burst into astonished whispers and congratulatory remarks. My parents radiated pride while Josh's partner Teresa applauded enthusiastically. My cousin Jenna cast me a bewildered look from her position across the room, aware of the special bond Grandpa and I had shared. I remained motionless, unable to comprehend what I was witnessing. The lakeside cottage represented Grandpa's most treasured asset. It was also where I had dedicated nearly every weekend over the previous 3 years, assisting with property upkeep, listening to his tales, and simply savoring his companionship. Josh, conversely, had made perhaps 2 visits in the past 5 years, consistently grumbling about the absence of internet connectivity and entertainment options. More significantly, 3 weeks earlier, Grandpa had presented me with a small wooden container, making me swear not to open it until the appropriate moment arrived. Within it lay a notarized document transferring the vacation property's ownership to me. He had already bestowed the property upon me. It wasn't included in his estate. As Josh opened the letter and commenced reading what were allegedly Grandpa's final wishes, I examined his expression closely. Was he being dishonest? Did he have knowledge of the deed? Had Grandpa somehow reversed his decision without informing me? "That's wonderful news for you, Josh," I forced myself to say with a strained smile, though my thoughts were spinning frantically. I needed to return home immediately to verify the documents in that wooden container. I discreetly made my excuses, claiming I needed to visit the restroom, and withdrew from the festivities. After closing the bathroom door behind me, I pressed my back against it and drew a deep breath. The letter Josh had displayed to everyone seemed illogical. Grandpa's penmanship had grown progressively unsteady during his final months due to arthritis, yet the signature I glimpsed appeared suspiciously fluid and assured. My phone vibrated with a message from Jenna. "Are you all right?" That situation felt strange. Josh never showed any concern for the cottage. I responded to Jenna, "Need to verify something at home. Can you make excuses for me? Tell them I received a work emergency call." Within moments, she had provided explanations to the family, allowing me to slip out through the back exit while everyone remained captivated by Josh's supposed inheritance. The journey to my apartment felt dreamlike, with streetlights creating blurs as memories of Grandpa flooded my consciousness, teaching me fishing techniques from the dock, identifying constellations in the pristine mountain sky, chuckling at my pitiful stone-skipping attempts across the lake. The vacation property wasn't merely real estate. It housed our most valuable memories. It was our sacred space where Grandpa had instructed me about perseverance, patience, and discovering happiness in life's simplicities. Josh had never demonstrated interest in those teachings or the cottage itself. His proclamation felt like a desecration of something holy. Upon arriving home, I proceeded directly to my closet and retrieved the wooden container Grandpa had given me. It was his former cigar box, polished smooth by time, with cedar that still retained its fragrance when opened. "Don't unlock this until you must learn the truth," he had told me, his eyes crinkling with that characteristic wisdom, suggesting he possessed knowledge beyond what he revealed. My hands shook as I raised the lid. Inside were several precisely folded documents, a sealed envelope bearing my name, and a small brass key I immediately recognized. It operated the antique roll-top desk in Grandpa's cottage study. I unfolded the primary document and gasped in amazement. It was precisely as I recalled, a notarized deed transferring the vacation home's ownership to me, dated 6 months prior. Accompanying it was a letter written in Grandpa's unmistakably tremulous handwriting. "My beloved Jules," it commenced, "by the time you read this correspondence, I will probably be deceased. I have chosen to transfer the cabin to you while I remain alive to prevent any difficulties. You are the sole person who genuinely loved this location as deeply as I did. Your brother never demonstrated interest except when he required a venue for hosting parties during my absence." Tears obscured my vision as I continued reading. "I realize your brother may challenge this decision, which explains why I have ensured everything is properly notarized and documented. There is a duplicate with my attorney, Harold Thompson. The cabin legally belongs to you already. This is not included in my will or estate. I trust you to preserve the essence of our special place." I leaned back, astounded. Josh had deceived everyone. He had created a false letter while knowing perfectly well that Grandpa had already transferred the property to me. The boldness was staggering, even by his standards. My phone buzzed with messages from my parents inquiring about my sudden departure. Josh had also sent a text. Clever vanishing act. "Don't worry, you can still visit the cabin if you request permission politely." That message confirmed what I needed to do. I wouldn't confront him through text or phone calls. This situation demanded something more direct. I collected the documents, returned them to the box, and noted the time. The celebration would continue for several more hours. I dried my tears, took a steadying breath, and returned to my vehicle. The moment had come for the truth to emerge. The drive back to Josh's residence provided thinking time. I had no intention of creating a spectacle. That wasn't my nature and certainly not what Grandpa would have desired. He had always advised me, "When truth is on your side, Jules, there's no need to broadcast it loudly. Quiet truth impacts more powerfully than any boisterous lie." I parked 1 block from Josh's house, the wooden container secure on the passenger seat beside me. For a moment, I simply sat there, gathering courage. I reflected on all the weekends spent with Grandpa at the cabin, while Josh was too occupied to visit. I remembered how Grandpa's expression would brighten upon my arrival, how we would spend hours conversing about everything and nothing on the porch swing. "What would you do, Grandpa?" I whispered, running my fingers across the box's smooth surface. The answer appeared almost immediately in my thoughts. The right thing with dignity. I decided against returning to the party immediately. Instead, I texted Jenna, "How many people remain there?" She replied promptly, "Just family now. Most guests departed after dinner. Are you returning?" This was perfect. I didn't want a crowd for what needed to happen. I took the box and walked the short distance to Josh's front entrance. When I knocked, Josh himself answered, his expression changing from surprise to wariness. "Work emergency concluded already?" he asked, his tone suggesting he didn't believe there had been one initially. "We need to have a conversation, Josh," I said calmly, stepping past him into the house. Everyone looked up as I entered the living room. My father was examining what must have been Josh's letter more closely, while my mother was already planning renovation ideas for the cabin with Teresa. Jenna sat quietly in the corner, observing the scene with obvious discomfort. "Jules has returned," my mother announced unnecessarily. "We were just discussing Josh's marvelous news about the cabin." "Actually," I said, placing the wooden container on the coffee table, "that's what I wanted to discuss." Josh's eyes fixed on the box, recognition flickering across his features. "What is that?" he asked, though I could tell from his expression he had a reasonable idea. "Something Grandpa gave me 3 weeks ago," I explained, keeping my voice steady. He requested that I not open it until the time was appropriate. I looked directly at Josh. "I believe that time has arrived." Before Josh could object, my father leaned forward with curiosity. "What is it, Jules?" I opened the box and carefully removed the notarized deed and Grandpa's letter. 6 months ago, Grandpa legally transferred the vacation home's ownership to me, I said, placing the documents on the table for everyone to examine. "It already belongs to me. It's not included in his estate or will." The room became silent. My mother's mouth fell open while my father picked up the deed with a furrowed brow. Josh stood frozen, his complexion draining of color. This is notarized, my father confirmed, examining the document. And this is definitely your grandfather's signature. That's impossible, Josh finally stammered. Grandpa gave me the letter. He wanted me to have the cabin. May I examine that letter again? I asked, extending my hand toward my father. He handed it over, and I placed it alongside Grandpa's handwritten letter from my box. The difference was stark and unmistakable. The handwriting on Josh's letter was an attempt at imitation, but it lacked the telltale unsteadiness caused by Grandpa's arthritis. The signature was too flawless, too controlled. Josh, my mother said slowly, her voice barely audible. Did you forge this letter? His silence provided sufficient answer. Josh's silence extended uncomfortably before he finally broke it, his voice mixing defiance with desperation. You don't comprehend the situation. It's not fair that she receives everything. Everything. I echoed, genuinely confused. What are you referring to? You were always Grandpa's favorite, Josh said, his words rushing forth like water through a damaged dam. Always visiting him, always assisting him, always the perfect grandchild. The rest of us barely received acknowledgement. My father cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable with the conversation's direction. Josh, regardless of your feelings, forging your grandfather's signature is a serious matter. Let me see those, my mother interjected, reaching for both letters. She compared them side by side, her expression shifting from disbelief to disappointment. Oh, Josh, she sighed. How could you do this? Teresa slowly rose, her face pale. I think I should leave, she murmured, avoiding Josh's pleading look as she gathered her purse and headed toward the door. Wait! Teresa, this isn't what it appears to be, Josh called after her, but she was already gone, the front door closing firmly behind her. The room fell silent again. Jenna caught my eye and gave me a small supportive nod. She had always seen through Josh's behavior, even when our parents couldn't. I don't understand, my father said finally, turning to Josh. Why would you announce something like this without verifying if it was true? The will reading isn't until next week. Josh's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. I discovered the deed, he admitted. I was at Grandpa's lawyer's office last week inquiring about the estate, and Thompson mentioned that the cabin wasn't included because it had already been handled. He wouldn't provide more details due to client confidentiality, but I understood what it meant. I just thought, he continued, then stopped. Thought what? My mother pressed. Maybe Jules would simply allow me to have it. Maybe everyone would believe me instead of her for once. Josh snapped, his voice rising. Maybe I could possess something that mattered to Grandpa, too. His words hung in the air, revealing a jealousy deeper than I had realized. I felt a pang of sympathy despite everything. Had he truly felt that excluded from Grandpa's life? Josh, I said quietly, Grandpa invited you to the cabin countless times. You always claimed you were too busy. Because I felt like an intruder, he shot back. By the time I realized what I was missing, it was too late. You two had your special bond, your inside jokes, your traditions. There was no place for me. My father shook his head, disappointment evident in his expression. That doesn't justify lying to the entire family, son. Josh slumped into a chair, the fight seemingly draining out of him. So what happens now? He asked, not looking at any of us. You've made your point, Jules. You win. This isn't about winning, I said, thinking of Grandpa and what he would want in this moment. Despite Josh's deception, he was still my brother, and Grandpa had loved him too in his own way. I reached back into the wooden box and pulled out something I hadn't mentioned yet, a sealed envelope with Josh's name written in Grandpa's distinctive handwriting. He left something for you too, I said, holding it out to my brother. Josh looked up, suspicion and hope warring in his expression. What is it? I don't know, I admitted honestly. Grandpa told me not to open anything that wasn't addressed to me. After a moment's hesitation, Josh took the envelope and carefully opened it. As he read the contents, his expression shifted from defensive to shocked and finally to something that resembled genuine remorse. He knew, Josh said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. He knew I might try to claim the cabin. My mother moved to sit beside him. What does it say, honey? Josh hesitated, then handed her the letter. Read it, he said. Everyone should hear it. My mother adjusted her reading glasses and began. Dear Josh, if you're reading this, Then Jules has opened my cedar box, which means one of two things. Either I'm gone, or something has happened that made her feel it was necessary to reveal its contents. I've known you since the day you were born, and I know your heart. You've always wanted recognition and validation, things I perhaps failed to give you in the way you needed. But I also know when you feel overlooked, you sometimes make impulsive decisions that hurt others and ultimately yourself. The cabin has been transferred to Jules. This was a decision I made with great thought and love, not because I didn't care for you, but because Jules connected with the place in a way you never did. She understood what made it special to me, and I trust her to preserve that spirit. What you need isn't a property, Josh, it's a purpose. I've enclosed a check for $25,000. Use it to start something meaningful. Find what makes your heart come alive, the way the cabin does for Jules. Maybe it's that business idea you mentioned last Christmas, or perhaps something else entirely. I hope someday you'll understand that this isn't about favorites or fairness. It's about recognizing different paths for different hearts. Jules will keep the door open for you at the cabin. I have no doubt, but your future lies in building something of your own. With love and hope, Grandpa. When my mother finished reading, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Josh sat with his head bowed, the check clutched in his trembling hand. He saw right through me, he murmured. Even from the grave. My father moved to place a comforting hand on Josh's shoulder. Your grandfather was a perceptive man. Josh looked up at me, really looked at me, perhaps for the first time in years. I'm sorry, Jules. I had no right to try and take what was already yours. The words seemed to cost him, but they also sounded sincere. I nodded, not quite ready to offer forgiveness, but acknowledging his apology. There's something else in the box, I said, reaching for it again. I pulled out a small photo album and opened it to reveal pictures spanning years, Josh and me as children at the cabin, building sandcastles by the lake, roasting marshmallows with Grandpa at the fire pit. He kept this in his desk at the cabin, I explained, turning pages to show more recent photos. He never stopped hoping you'd come around, Josh. My brother stared at the photos, emotion washing over his face. I really messed up, didn't I? Yes, I agreed, not sugarcoating it. But Grandpa obviously thought you could do better. The room fell silent again, but it was a different kind of silence, contemplative rather than tense, sad rather than angry. The evening had taken a turn none of us had expected, laying bare years of complicated feelings and unspoken resentments. Jenna, who had been watching silently, finally spoke up. So what happens now? It was the question hanging in the air for all of us. What do you do after a moment of painful truth? How do you move forward from betrayal and revelation? I closed the wooden box, feeling the weight of responsibility Grandpa had placed on me, not just for the cabin, but perhaps for healing our family too. Now, I said quietly, we try to honor what Grandpa wanted for both of us. The gathering dispersed soon after. My parents left with concerned glances back at Josh, clearly torn between disappointment in his actions and worry for his well-being. Jenna gave me a quick hug before heading out, whispering, "Call me tomorrow." And then it was just Josh and me in his new house, the celebratory atmosphere completely evaporated. Josh moved around his kitchen mechanically, making coffee neither of us really wanted. The silence between us felt heavy with all the years of competition and misunderstanding. "I didn't plan it," he said finally, setting a mug in front of me. "The forgery, I mean. When I found out about the deed, I was angry, hurt. I made the letter that same night, not really thinking I'd use it." "Then why did you?" I asked, wrapping my hands around the warm mug. Josh stared into his coffee as if it might hold answers. "When everyone was here tonight, celebrating my new house, I wanted more. Something bigger to announce. It just came out." He looked up, his expression vulnerable in a way I rarely saw. "I've always been jealous of what you had with Grandpa. You could have had it too," I pointed out, not unkindly. "He wanted that." "I know that now," Josh admitted. "But I was too proud, too stubborn to see it then." He hesitated, then asked, "What are you going to do with the cabin?" It was the question I'd been asking myself since Grandpa had given me the deed 6 months ago. "Keep it as it is, mostly. It needs some repairs, but I don't want to change its character." Josh nodded, looking relieved. "That's good. It should stay the way Grandpa loved it." I studied my brother, this person I'd grown up with but sometimes felt I barely knew. "You're welcome there, you know. Anytime. His eyes widened slightly in surprise. Even after what I did? The cabin was meant to bring family together, not drive us apart, I said, echoing what I believe Grandpa would have wanted. That doesn't mean I'm not still angry, or that I trust you completely right now, but the door is open. Josh seemed to understand the qualified olive branch for what it was. Thank you. We sat in silence for a few more minutes, sipping coffee that had already gone cold. The night had been exhausting, emotionally and physically, and there was still much to process. I should go, I said finally, standing up. It's been a long night. Josh walked me to the door. Before I left, he asked, Do you think Grandpa knew this would happen? The showdown over the cabin. I thought about the careful preparation Grandpa had made, the notarized deed, the separate letters, his instructions to me about when to open the box. I think he hoped it wouldn't, I answered honestly. But he was prepared in case it did. Josh shook his head, a rueful smile on his face. He always was 3 steps ahead of everyone else. That he was, I agreed. As I drove home, the wooden box secure on the seat beside me once more, I felt a curious mixture of emotions. Sadness for the pain of the evening, relief that the truth was out, and a tentative hope that maybe, just maybe, this could be a turning point for Josh and me. The cabin keys felt heavy in my pocket, not just metal but the weight of responsibility and memory. Grandpa had trusted me with something precious, and I intended to honor that trust. But maybe there was room for Josh in that picture too, if he was willing to meet me halfway. Tomorrow, I decided, I would drive up to the cabin, sit on the porch swing, watch the light change over the water, and perhaps feel Grandpa's presence one more time, guiding us toward healing even in his absence. The cabin looked exactly as I remembered it, weathered cedar siding, emerald green shutters, and the wide porch that wrapped around 3 sides of the structure. As I pulled into the gravel driveway, the early morning sun cast long shadows through the pines, creating patterns across the ground that seemed to welcome me home. I sat in my car for a moment, taking it all in. This was mine now, not just a building or a piece of property, but a sanctuary filled with memories and whispers of the past. I could almost see Grandpa in his favorite rocking chair, baseball cap pulled low over his eyes as he dozed in the afternoon light. The cabin key slid into the lock with a familiar resistance. You had to jiggle it just right, a quirk Grandpa had refused to fix because he claimed it kept out the riffraff. Inside, everything was just as he'd left it. Books stacked on the side table, fishing gear organized meticulously in the corner, the faint scent of pipe tobacco lingering in the air despite his doctor's orders to quit smoking years ago. I moved through the room slowly, trailing my fingers along furniture that had been in our family for generations. The stillness was peaceful rather than oppressive, as if the cabin itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Jenna. How's the cabin? Your mom called me this morning. Josh is a wreck. I typed back. Cabin's perfect. Not sure how to feel about Josh yet. Another message followed quickly. He's been calling everyone, trying to explain himself. Your parents are still pretty upset. I wasn't surprised. The fallout from last night's revelations would take time to settle. Trust, once broken, couldn't be mended overnight. Setting my phone aside, I walked to the large picture window overlooking the lake. The water sparkled in the morning light, serene and unchanging despite the human drama unfolding around it. I'm here, Grandpa, I whispered to the empty room. I'll take good care of it, I promise. 3 weeks passed before Josh reached out. His text was simple. Can we talk? At the cabin, maybe. I deliberated for a day before responding with a time and date. Part of me wasn't ready to share the space with him yet, but Grandpa's voice kept echoing in my mind. Holding grudges makes the heart heavy jewels. Sometimes forgiveness is more for you than for them. When Josh's car pulled up the following Saturday, I was sitting on the porch swing, nursing a cup of coffee. He approached slowly, looking more subdued than I'd seen him in years. This place hasn't changed at all, he said, glancing around. That's the idea, I replied, gesturing to the chair across from me. He sat down, fingers drumming nervously on his knees. I've been thinking about what to say for weeks, but everything sounds inadequate. Try anyway, I suggested, neither cold nor particularly warm. Josh took a deep breath. I'm sorry, not just for the forgery, but for everything. For being jealous of your relationship with Grandpa, for resenting you when I should have been looking at my own choices. I studied his face, trying to gauge the sincerity behind his words. The Josh I knew was a master of telling people what they wanted to hear when it served his purposes. Why did you do it? I asked. The truth, Josh. He looked out at the lake, quiet for a long moment. I thought if I had the cabin, it would somehow make up for all the time I didn't spend here. Like I could buy back those moments I missed. His voice cracked slightly. Stupid, right? There was a vulnerability in his admission that felt genuine, not an excuse, just a sad acknowledgement of a faulty thought process. I used the money, he said suddenly. Grandpa's check. For what? I enrolled in that woodworking course Grandpa was always telling me to try, the one I was too busy for. He gave a self-deprecating laugh. Turns out I'm terrible at it, but I'm going to stick with it. He was right, it's calming, being focused on creating something with your hands. It was a small thing, but significant, coming from Josh, who had always been too impatient for such pursuits. He would have liked that, I said quietly. We sat in silence for a while, listening to the gentle lapping of water against the shore and the distant call of birds. It was the same peaceful soundtrack that had accompanied countless conversations between Grandpa and me over the years. I have something to show you, I said finally, standing up. Josh followed me inside to Grandpa's study, where the antique roll-top desk stood in the corner, bathed in morning light. I used the brass key from the wooden box to unlock it, revealing neatly organized compartments filled with papers, letters, and small mementos. Grandpa kept everything, I explained, pulling out a folder marked Josh. Inside were newspaper clippings of Josh's high school debate championship, photos of his college graduation, and even a printout of the webpage announcing his promotion last year. He was proud of you, I said softly. He just showed it differently than you wanted. Josh's fingers trembled slightly as he paged through the collection. I had no idea he kept track of all this. There's a folder for each family member, I explained. He called it his Brad book. Josh looked up, his eyes glistening. I really messed up, didn't I? Yes, I agreed, not sugarcoating it. But Grandpa believed in second chances. So do I. I pulled out a calendar from my bag and handed it to him. I've marked weekends when I'll be up here for maintenance and bigger projects. I could use an extra pair of hands, even terrible woodworking ones. A smile tugged at his lips. Really? The cabin was meant to bring family together, not drive us apart, I said. That's what Grandpa wanted. Later that afternoon, we sat on the end of the dock, feet dangling in the cool water. Josh pitched ideas for renovating the boathouse while I sketched possibilities in a notebook. You know, Josh, I said, looking out across the water, I think Grandpa knew exactly what he was doing, giving you this place. What do you mean? You didn't just inherit a cabin, he said thoughtfully. You inherited his role, keeping the family connected to what matters. As the sun began its descent behind the mountains, casting golden reflections across the lake, I realized Grandpa had given me more than property. He'd given me the chance to heal old wounds and forge new connections, starting with the brother I'd almost lost to resentment and pride.